Hey folks, is your BBEG just a big, boring, evil guy?
Learn to add depth and story to your villains tonight.
That's how we roll. 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 Welcome to the Goblin's Corner. My name is Eric.
And I'm Matt.
And tonight,
We're talking about interesting villains.
that's right. Villains are interesting, and so tonight we're going to talk about how to make your villains even more interesting than you think they are.
Nobody likes a one-dimensional villain unless that is literally the purpose of what you're doing.
That's right. We're also going to add some unique flavor via story options and maybe a little bit of role-playing options.
And we're going to give you, like we normally do, some example villains.
And they are most engaging. So let's get started, shall we?
Certainly.
Villains are very interesting, Matt. And in fact, in a storytelling game like D&D or Pathfinder, something like that, or any game really, you're going to have some antagonists.
Sure.
Protagonist, antagonist. Now, sometimes the PCs are the antagonists, but,
That is true.
In most games, you've got a big bad evil guy or a bunch of villains.
And as before, sometimes those are one-dimensional villains, and that can be okay.
Oh, yeah. Case in point, some crunchies for players to kill.
Sure. Those are just crunchable things.
Got
They're-
some goblins you got to destroy. You've got some undead that are in a dungeon you want to get rid of. Got to clean out that dungeon. I mean, where else are you going to build a base?
Right. Monster of the Week type scenario.
Exactly. However, more often, you want to give a bit more flavor to your villain. And when you do, they can be exceptionally awesome.
Basically, you want to add more depth, complexity, and emotional engagement to your villain.
And the key on the emotional engagement.
Yeah, the emotion doesn't have to be happy.
Oh, it could be hatred. It should be
And
hatred.
oftentimes
I'll
should, yeah.
get you and your little dog, right? Make the players care.
Just in general.
Whether they care about the villain, maybe they want to redeem the villain.
Sure, maybe they're just a sad, misunderstood creature that needs a shot at redemption.
Or maybe they want to love it to death in only the way that an orc barbarian with a large mallet with nails in it could love it to death.
Sure,
Maybe it just needs killing.
sure.
And that's fine too.
The point is, they provide a focal point for the story. The BBEG is often the focal point.
Yeah, it gives players like a rally point to kind of come together as a group. You need something to bring the players together when you're playing. Another thing you want to think about is demonstrating where that fine line is in the sand between anti-heroes and murderers.
Sure, you've got heroes, anti-heroes, and villains. And the lines between each of those can get razor thin at times.
Yeah, Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker, right? Just one step away from either side.
Sure.
Can happen. So that's a lot of fun. This is why villains are very interesting, and we're going to make villains even more interesting. We've got 10 ways that you can do it tonight. None of this is rocket science, folks, right? Guess what? It's a lot of role-playing options and a lot of ways that you can kind of think beforehand to make your characters more interesting. But if you use any of these, you will have better stories.
Yes.
So let's get started with number 1. What's the first one, Matt?
Give them complex motivations.
Yes. Give villains goals. Make these goals understandable and make them relate to the character. This is very important.
Sure.
Villains have goals. It may be that your goal is to live in a volcano fortress and extort $1 million while you build sharks with freaking laser beams. Or it could be world domination.
Sure.
It could be both.
Why not?
Why not? It should be both, right?
It's world domination, 1 million at a time.
You might just be a lich just chilling in the bottom of a dungeon, just trying to get some study on. But you can't because all these damn players keep coming in and up your rotation.
At that point, I might argue that the players are actually the antagonists.
Well, we'll get in. You know what? That's it's an episode for later.
Fair.
Fair enough. Yeah. So DMs, give these goals some sort of backstory and make the players aware of why the villain believes their actions are justified.
Yeah.
Because they are justified for the villain's point
From
of view.
their perspective,
Yeah.
100%.
From a certain point of view, Luke.
Yes. You can reveal bits of their motivations through NPCs, journals, or even direct confrontations.
Yeah, there's nothing like a good monologue when you've
Sure.
reached the end of the storyline. Now, these motivations can have personal connections to them as well.
Most people are going to turn to villainy for a reason that directly hinges on their personal connections, realistically.
Being a villain is a very personal experience. Their
Yeah.
goals will be personal, right? Figure out those personal goals. You can also provide some sort of moral ambiguity in their complex motivation as well.
Another classic option is they could just be tragic victims of something.
Yeah, they're a victim of circumstance. They just became bad.
Yeah.
Not because they had a choice, because they had to survive. That's a lot of fun too.
Sure.
So your goals can be all of those things, and that's an easy thing to do. Number 2,
Speaking of tragic victims, give them a tragic past.
this pretty much ensures your motivation. You give them a tragic past, you've got a motivation, right?
Yep. And it comes immediately down to their backstory, and you're good to go.
Bam. Backstory is everything with the villain. Now, you don't have to tell the backstory to the player characters. You can reveal bits and pieces of it if you like, but you need a backstory, at least in your head, because you want to take the shoes of the villain and kind of look at it from their point of view.
Yep. How did that tragic backstory? Okay, yes, it made them a villain, but how did it shape what type of villain they are as well?
So put yourself into their perspective is what we're getting at.
Yep.
DMs, you can do a lot of things with that. You can use monologues. We love a DM that monologues a villain, right?
Sure.
There's nothing like it, man. Your player character in there and you get, oh, yes, it's time for the monologue as I ready my spells, right? It's just fun. You can use flashbacks, some sort of dramatic way to do that. You can use dreams. That's
Sure.
always a lot of fun. The dream sequence is always a good go-to. And you can even use third-party accounts to get to the villain's past. This is a great indirect way to learn more about the villain from like an NPC.
A drunkard in a bar.
Yeah, or the shopkeeper that's heard about the villain, right?
Yeah. The PCs are talking about the BBEG in public, right? They're discussed because very often players never think about where they are when they're talking.
Yes, the PCs are in the middle of the bar talking about robbing the king
Sure.
because the king is evil and everybody can hear them.
Barkeep, or like I said, some random old drunk is like, oh, you don't understand what they've been through. And then here's a chunk of the backstory.
Here's
for
some
you.
tragic past,
Yep.
right? PCs should know something about the villain before the end game, right? Before the
Yes.
showdown, before that story arc concludes. You got to know a little bit about them.
You should not have a session where the first hour of it is them monologuing the entire backstory that you didn't manage to get to them in the meantime.
Absolutely. Know something about their personal history, about their tragic past. Speaking of personal history, we have number 3.
Personal connections. We did mention this.
Yes, give them personal connections.
Yeah. Villains are people, usually.
Usually.
So they should have connections to others.
Yeah. Even if it's a magical box that spews demons upon the world, that box was created by somebody. And if it's interacting with the world, like an intelligent artifact or something like that,
Mhm.
it's going to have behaviors, motivations, even if-
Personalities.
yeah, some sort of personality. Even if it's a simple personality, it just wants to birth demons upon the world, right? Have them work at Starbucks.
Sure.
It could. Maybe they have more personal motivations. In addition to Starbucks, maybe they want to take over the Caribou Coffees of the world as well.
Well, I mean, the demons working at Starbucks makes perfect sense. It's just another version of hell. But there's no reason they should take over a good coffee shop.
Green coffee for everyone. Yeah. So in short, build some history between the villain and the players. This is a cool thing to do. That personal connections, by the way, may not be other minions. It could literally just be the PCs because they might have met the villain in the past. How cool
Sure.
is that? Maybe they all grew up in the same town, right?
Yeah, it's a rival, or it could have been a series of events that the players never took note of, but that were life-changing for the villain.
Hey, man, Dr. Doom studied with Reed Richards.
Yep.
They were boys until that horrible accident disfigured his face.
A villain, theoretically, had parents, may have siblings,
It's
may
true.
have nieces, nephews, children of their own. Those can come into play either in a fun way or a tragic way or whatever. as part of that personal connection. Like, can you imagine this terrible bloodlord who is the absolute most doting uncle that ever was?
That would be great. Maybe one of the PCs is dating his niece.
Oh, yeah. Like, if you want to turn it into like a comedy of errors game, it could get really fun really quickly.
That's a lot of fun. So drop some hints, drop a little bit of lore, let the PCs do some skill checks. This is a great opportunity to do so, right?
Sure.
Particularly if you're playing some sort of intrigue campaign or something like that.
Yes.
Number 4, explore moral ambiguity.
We, at least the two of us, love moral quandaries between NPCs and PCs.
We here at the Goblin's Corner enjoy torturing our players
Yes, indeed.
with strange moral quandaries. So what exactly does that mean, Matt? We mean make the actions morally gray, but give me an example.
Killing a society of monsters might be a morally gray action.
Well, if they're monsters, you got to clear that dungeon out. However, they have families.
And if they're a society, that means they are thinking creatures. And if they are not being aggressive to their neighbors, then you have instead murdered a bunch of sentients and not monsters.
But in the name of maybe saving a town, and this is where that whole morally gray area for villains comes in.
Right.
What if you take it too far? That's always a lot of fun to give a villain sort of an interesting aspect. They're only doing it because they're trying to save the town, folks.
That gave me an idea about an orphan in human society, or, demi-human society, that has been saving monster orphans from adventurers coming through and slaughtering towns of goblins and
So
stuff.
the BBEG has a horde of monsters
that are all orphans that they have rescued from adventurers.
That is fantastic. I think that's great.
And so
PCs
they're
roll up.
raising a monstrous army, but they're literally raising a monstrous army.
PCs roll up expecting like an army, and it is kind of an army, but it's an army of like friendly monsters.
Yeah.
Now who's the villain? That's great, right?
Yep.
DMs create situations where the villain's actions can be seen in both a positive and a negative light. This is important. Again, in many cases, they're humanoid, right? They
Sure.
might not be human. They might be a lich.
Right.
They were once human.
Humanish.
Humanish, right? That's fine. Could be a demon, but even demons have motivations, evil motivations. So that's a lot of fun. Create those situations.
For fun storytelling, have the PCs briefly team up during a storyline, like the enemy sort of thing,
Yeah.
for the benefit of the greater good.
So this is a lot of fun where there might be a worse BBEG or maybe like a plague,
Sure.
and the villain has to team up with the heroes, your players,
Right.
and they have to do something somewhat morally reprehensible, right?
Sure. The way the BBEG looks at it is, I can't take over the world if there's no world left to take over.
That's true.
And the players are looking at it like we have to save the world.
So
They're
sometimes
literally working to the same end.
got to make an omelet, got to break a few eggs.
Yep.
Yeah. Number 5, let the players sympathize with the villains.
All you have to do is give them some sympathetic traits and behaviors.
This is amazing for storytelling. And again, this falls in line with their motivations, connections to others. Again, simple role-playing stuff, right?
Yep.
They can do anything from being kind to specific people, like children, like you mentioned before. Again, I love the doting bloodlord uncle.
Yeah.
For some reason, I see it's like this pudgy bloodlord uncle. It's just got like full plate mail. It's bright red. It's got spikes on it, covered in gore.
Yeah.
Viscera everywhere. But he's got like a pot belly.
A spike-topped battle axe.
Yeah, it kind of looks like he's got dad bod.
Yeah, he's 100% a barbecuer.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. And then his niece is like a little, just golden-eyed
Adorable,
angel. Yeah.
Cindy Lou Who type.
Yes, from Whoville.
Yeah.
How delightful, right? Always gets her a present.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he slays his enemies.
I got you this little crown. I had to murder a different princess to get it, but I got you a crown.
Do you see this awesome macaroni art my niece got me? How delightful. I'm going to hang this up in the Iron Maiden while they're being tortured to death. Oh, it's a really beautiful picture as I'm slowly being bled out.
Sure.
So, yeah, let them be kind to specific people. Let them show love or even vulnerability around others. This makes them sympathetic.
Sure.
And that makes for a more engaging, I'd say more human storyline.
Alternatively, you could have NPCs provide alternative viewpoints to the villain. Like maybe they had a positive experience.
Yes. So a good example of that is we're talking about the Bloodlord, right? Maybe he commands an army, but he commands it with honor.
Sure.
So he decimates the enemy, but treats all of his personnel really nice, right?
A good example of this is, I am a Bloodlord. I am on the way to take over this town.
Mm-hmm.
I get there and find that it's besieged by monsters.
So you kill all the monsters.
I'm going to murder those. That's my town. I've already claimed it.
Yeah. So you've saved the town.
Yeah.
But you're also going to take over the town.
Right. But they're better off in my hands than being eaten.
Yeah, fair enough.
And so, like, when you provide the NPC those two choices, be eaten or have been conquered, right? Most people will take conquered.
Yeah, cake or death.
Yeah, exactly.
So these positive viewpoints don't actually have to be real viewpoints either. They could be, for example, some sort of political campaign where they've spun how great the villain is, and everyone believes that the villain is great. And the villain even says how great he is.
Sure.
He might say frequently how great he is, over and over, lying about it, you might say.
Sure.
But everybody knows he's not a good person.
We're dipping dangerously close to political territory.
We won't go any further with that. So there's a lot of fun things you can do. Speaking of other fun things you can do, we've got what, Matt?
It's time for the question of the week.
All right. Hit me with this villain question of the week. I know it's a villain question of the week, right?
It is.
All right.
I try to keep them on theme
Excellent.
most of the time.
What do we got?
I personally like to give a villain a physically unique object that gives players something to overthink. For you.
For me.
For Eric.
For Eric.
What type of weapon, wand, staff, or like gear piece would you have as a BBEG to make people fear you?
So I would have I have this idea of if I was a big bad evil guy, I would be throwing fireballs anyway.
Right.
So I probably would have a Zippo that I would just flick back and forth, ching, ching, just open and close like
Sure.
the fawns. But it wouldn't be a typical Zippo. It would have like maybe a dragon face, and when it opens up, that would be the mouth, and it would talk to me. It would hurl insults as it hurled fireballs.
Does it actually talk to you? Like, can other people hear it talk to you, or do you just hear it talk to you?
I'd be fine either way.
Okay.
It'd be more fun if I just talked to the Zippo, I think.
And it answers, but only in your head?
Yeah, he's crazy. He's crazy, but it would float next to me.
Nice.
So that way they don't know whether or not it actually
like an iron stone, but a Zippo.
Yeah, well, Elminster's got his pipe.
Sure.
I've got my Zippo. What about you? What would you have?
As a BBEG, not as the person I try to be, the twisted, rotting heartwood of a Hierophant treant as a staff.
Very specific.
I figured, like, if I'm going to go down the evil route, like, let's go.
You could be evil druid?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you shapeshift into a bear and bite somebody's face off?
Once upon a time, we did an episode about druid circles.
It's true, we did.
And one of them was the anti-civilization druid circle. If I went BBEG...
You gonna go off the grid?
That's where
Tear
I'm
out
going.
the heart of a treant?
Yep.
Make it into a staff?
And then start destroying civilization.
So when you start getting some wood carving tools, I need to be worried.
Yes.
Of course, we're always interested in your answer to the question of the week, and if you have one, hit us up at Goblin's Corner on all the various socials. And of course, Matt, what else can you do?
You can comment down below if you're watching us on YouTube. That's what the section's for.
That's right. So we're talking about ways to make your villain even more interesting, and we've moved on to number 6.
Provide the possibility for redemption.
The villain is the product of their circumstances. Give them the ability to redeem themselves.
Sure.
This is an amazing way to make them more interesting. A good example of that is the Punisher. Now, the Punisher's not a good person. Kills people.
Yeah.
Violently.
Yeah.
Kills anybody that gets in their way.
He is strictly a criminal.
He is a murderer. But you can kind of see that redemption arc that he wants to be good.
As an everyday person, you can also see where he's coming from.
Sure. Yeah. Had a tragic past, right?
Yes.
Again, another interesting thing about being a villain. This can fall in line with your tragic past, right? So maybe the reason they're so bad is because something bad happened to them. And they started out as a good person.
Yeah.
And maybe they go back and forth. They fluctuate, right? They have those moments of crisis. Well, do I really go over the line? really, drop this bomb or kill this village full of kids.
If you take the Punisher as an example, right? Like, even if he begins his redemption arc, there are going to be times where he's put in a situation because he's still trying to be a good guy where it becomes a me or them scenario.
Yeah. So it may be that they're not bad, but they're taking the worst scenario instead of the right scenario. And that's why they're villains. That's another example. Maybe not Punisher related, but it could work with anybody.
Sure.
I mean,
Dexter.
Dexter's a great example of that. Here's a problem. Solving it with maybe killing the person, not necessarily the best way.
Right. Storytellers should provide moments that the PCs can see and interact with, that the villain waffles in their actions or even wants to change their ways.
This is great with warlocks of any pact, too.
Sure.
So if the BBEG is a warlock or a dark sorcerer and you see them kind of waffle, you're like, man, I've gone too far. Now he's like, okay, I was kind of flirting with being bad. Now I'm seriously being evil.
Yes.
And maybe I want to pull back a little bit. And they try. But that darkness, that power corrupts.
Sure.
Pulls them back into the darkness. That's fun. It's fun to explore that stuff. So DMs offer the opportunity of the players to try to sway the villain.
So you can ask yourself, what would that look like? For any villain, what would the PCs need to do to tip them in the direction of goodness?
Yeah, and if you got like a
away
paladin,
from the path they're on, yeah.
If you got a paladin or a cleric in the group, this is a superb role-playing chance.
Sure.
To try to sway. And you know what? Hey, look, you didn't kill the villain. You defeated the villain by making them good. That's still worth XP.
Yeah.
In fact, I'd say that's worth more XP.
100%.
And as for yourself as a DM, what is keeping the villain from taking a different course of action than their usual murder hoboing or doing whatever dark deeds they happen to be? Know what that is, because then you might let your villain be swayed.
Number 7.
Make villains intelligent. Indicate they are capable of strategy. This is a pet peeve of mine, particularly when it comes to dragons, I've found. Dragons are generally intelligent in D&D, but villains command minions. They usually have like a big-ass base with traps and stuff like that. Don't make them stupid.
Unless they are so charismatic that they can get away with being stupid, they should be smart enough to be the person coming up with the plans for this.
Yes, and that I agree. They've surrounded themselves with smart people, but they're charismatic enough to kind of convince those people to make the plans for them. That's fine. Remember, they have a goal.
They should have several steps planned out in the process to their goal.
Yeah, they need to be 1 step or 2 steps or 10 steps ahead of the PCs. Doesn't mean they have to win, but they should already have thought of backup plans, right? So when the PCs bust down the door to their volcano hideaway, they've already tripped the switch that flips the chair and jumps into the the little chute, the pneumatic chute that they fly out of. Thinking of like Get Smart.
Yeah. For that, you can jump back to our episode, The Bad Guy Gets Away.
Absolutely you can, yeah. That was a fun, yeah. So find ways that, they can get ahead of the PCs in some ways, or at least figure some things out. Find ways to showcase these master plans that they have. Again, with monologues. We love a good monologue, right?
Mm-hmm. A found map or a list of explosives.
Yeah, so it could be an indirect method that the PCs find out about their master plan. And that's really good because that gets the player characters involved in like skill checks or just intrigue or investigation, stuff like that. DMs, the villain can and should be entirely capable of guarding their lair.
They should be using traps, spies, minions, manipulating events to their advantage.
This is a big, bad, evil guy or
and
girl.
This is their lair.
Yeah, it's their lair. If
you came to my house.
They got security systems. They've got sharks with laser beams. They've got a Tarask in the back, chilling.
It's important enough that we did an episode about lairs friggin' years ago.
Hey, you're just pulling out all the stops tonight.
Well, I mean, this does kind of meet up with some of the things we've done before, more than usual.
You know what? Their lair is a Tarask. There you go. They live in the belly of the Tarask. Go ahead, try to get in.
They have buildings in between the spines on the back of it.
Absolutely.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. So make them capable of anticipating the characters. Make them provide interesting obstacles and challenges for your PCs.
It should be harder to get into a lair than it is to rob a bank.
Number 8,
Villains are charismatic.
Particularly bosses,
Yes.
either through diplomacy, either through intimidation, or just guile and charm. They have minions.
Yes.
They're the BBEG, right?
When you start talking about minions in particular, you have to ask yourself, how does the villain inspire loyalty in their minions?
What do you mean by that?
Do they intimidate them
Mm-hmm.
to cow them into following them? Right? Intimidation is a charisma skill,
That's true.
in D&D at least. Have they convinced them that what they're doing is correct? Right? Is it a persuasion type situation here?
Or do they just pay them cash?
Do they just bribe them?
Yeah. Throw a chunk of raw meat on the floor and 50 gold pieces.
Did they go to the local goon union and just come with me, guys?
Welcome to the Goon Union number 75.
Sure.
So DMs show how the villain commands respect and admiration from their minions. And this is just role-playing.
And it can be a combination of those.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be all one thing.
Oh, yeah. It could be their mannerisms, like how they speak. It could be displays, like publicly. So if they're a leader of a group or something like that, they might be in politics. It might be a mayor of a town or something like that.
Sure.
So they do some kind of public speaking, and that's how they command respect. Again, the BBEG doesn't have to be a dragon in a lair. It could be the guild master,
Mm-hmm.
secretly a werewolf.
Why not?
Why not, right? Just murdering people. Could be indirectly through the reactions and interactions with NPCs.
Terrible joke. But if they're a guild merchant, they're not a werewolf, they're a warehouse.
A warehouse. Oh, that's a dad joke right there.
Told you it was terrible.
I love it. That would be an interesting warehouse indeed. Speaking of that, let's make villains more interesting with number 9.
Villains evolve.
Villains can learn and grow as the players grow, and should.
They can become stronger through various means.
And there's a lot of different ways they can do, right?
Right.
So you can have them do class features. You
Yeah,
can
they just gain levels.
just gain levels, which is fine, right? And that's the simplest way to make them evolve.
They can acquire magic items, which is just as simple.
And that provides delightful loot for your players.
Sure. Here's where things get a little more complicated, but oftentimes more fun. They can acquire political power or allies.
And this is great because, all right, it's one thing to go after an evil wizard. It's another thing to go after an evil wizard that's currently controlling the king.
Yes.
You're not going to roll.
100%.
Hey, look,
Yeah, that's
player's not going to roll in like Gandalf flashing his white staff.
right.
They're going to roll in and get sent to the dungeons. This is what's going to happen, right?
Yep.
Another thing they could do is just control physical geography, more area. So they started off with maybe like a fiefdom, and now they own the whole domain.
The larger the area they control, the more hostile territory the PCs have to get through.
Mm-hmm. What are some other ways they can evolve?
Knowledge.
Knowledge is power.
It is, but also most of the time the players have tactics and they start using those tactics. And once those tactics prove to be good, they use them over and over.
Mm-hmm.
That means that if there are ever any survivors or even any bodies, sooner or later, the BBEG is going to know what tactics the PCs prefer to use.
And use it against them.
And start using that knowledge against
That's
them.
great. Yeah, they come rolling up with an anti-magic shell because it worked against the enemy wizard, and they find out that was just a duplicate, and the BBEG is behind them, dropping rocks on them.
And that the ceiling above them is being held up with magic.
Oh, yes. That was a wall of force holding up 5,000 tons of rock.
Bad times. They are their own deadfall.
They can wait 50,000 years for the mountain to move, and they can get scraped up and rezzed later. Depending upon the game, the PC should learn about the villain's rise of power over time.
This is a great use of consequence of actions. If you have, from the start of this game, been dropping hints about this, and your PCs have been doing other things, important or not, or just messing around, this isn't a punishment. This is just a consequence of not making the rush.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You got a side quest. Oh, and by the way, there's this necromancer in the woods. Well, we'll get to that necromancer later. A few games later, now this necromancer has amassed an army of undead.
Sure.
Oh, no. But they haven't gotten to it yet. They're doing something else, right? A couple more game sessions. Now this necromancer's a lich. He's got a dungeon and everything. Got adventures coming, getting summoned as powerful undead. Pretty soon it's Dark Lord.
Yeah.
Got the wand of Orcus and everything.
Not long after that, sucked into the domain of dread.
Yep, that's what happens. Get sucked to Ravenloft. We've got our 10th way to make villains interesting. And what is that?
Everybody likes a good twist.
Yes.
Give your villains a great twist.
An unexpected twist?
Mm-hmm.
Change the player's attitudes on who they thought the villain was. This is a superb way to end a campaign story.
It doesn't have to be a big deal, right? For example, the BBEG could secretly be a monster versus a human.
Oh my God, that guildmaster is actually a werewolf.
There's a Rakshasa.
Rakshasa.
They're known for hiding what they are.
It's true. How would I have known? Every time he gave me chains, he got backwards hands.
Right.
But it could be anything, really. It could be just something interesting about the villain that maybe makes them question their morals because they killed this person. So a good example of that might be they were secretly good, but they were undercover.
In Forgotten Realms, there's a book called Crown of Fire, and there is a bad guy, in quotation marks, who has been undercover for the good guys for so long, even the good guys aren't sure if he's on their side anymore. And you don't find out about that until later in the book.
Plot twist.
Yep. And I'm not saying more than that because spoilers in case you get around to it.
I mean, it's been a while since
it has been out for a very long time, but new people, new readers.
Yeah. They could have a child. We mentioned this, the doting uncle, right?
Yeah.
That's a great unexpected twist if they just find that out after they've murdered the Bloodlord.
Sure. They were doing evil to save the world from an even worse monster.
That's the plot from Loki, right?
Sure.
He who waits.
Yep.
He was pruning the timeline so that...
It's also what, Fable 3?
Oh, yeah. That's a good point, too. Yeah.
There's lots of reasons why this could be the case. And, yeah, man, run it. It could be awesome.
This is one of my favorites. They were controlled by the actual BBEG. He was just a pawn.
Yep.
Damn it. Now I've got to go find the BBEG again. I love that one.
Me too.
That lich is controlled by a Draco Lich. Oh, no.
The BBEG is actually the good guy in the situation. But something like the propaganda machine is painting everything they do in the worst light possible.
Oh, that's cool. So it's like a spin doctoring type thing.
Robin Hood is a great example of this. If you look at that story from the Sheriff of Nottingham's side, where he's constantly putting up rewards for him and telling the people how awful he is, from that side of the story,
he's a criminal.
He's a criminal.
Yeah, he's a brigand. He's robbing people.
Right.
He's taking all their stuff, running off into the woods with God knows what.
Right. If you didn't receive that story from Robin Hood's side, but instead received the entire story from the sheriff's side, then he's just a criminal mastermind.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a lot of fun. That's an interesting thing to explore, too. So all of these are great to drop at the end of a story arc. So like when you defeat the villain, you secretly maybe get their diary and they're reading, oh my God, he's actually stealing all this money to feed the homeless kids? Damn it. Or maybe you could use it for other purposes, right? Maybe in the middle of a story or something like that. Savvy DMs should look for places to mix this in and really test the players.
And now we come to some example villains.
So these example villains use one of the 10 different types, maybe more than that. And we're just giving you some examples that you can use to spruce up your current villain, right?
Just some quick ideas.
Use these as you see fit. So the first one is a baron who seeks to conquer neighboring lands in order to protect his people from an apocalypse. Either real apocalypse, which is definitely some moral quandaries, right? Or an imagined apocalypse, which is even more fun.
A high priestess is using forbidden magic to heal the sick, but at the cost of her own humanity.
That's cool. The estranged sister of one of the party members turned to crime after feeling betrayed by her family.
That's rough stuff. That's going to be a tough choice to make.
That's a tragic past, right?
Yep. A mastermind who orchestrates a series of seemingly unrelated events to achieve a grand scheme.
Yeah, I love moving all the chess pieces around. That's a lot of fun for a BBEG. Here's one. A bloodthirsty general who wages war to avenge his fallen dynasty, but shows great compassion to his soldiers and civilians.
If you're a warrior that only kills warriors, basically you're just a dude doing his job.
Yeah.
A ruthless queen attracts devoted followers to her utopian society using charm and long-term strategies, despite her ruthless methods.
A necromancer starts as a minor threat, but gradually amasses an army of undead and dark powers.
Sure.
Might be a lich soon.
Yep, that's what we mentioned.
Yeah.
A noblewoman betrayed and left for dead now seeks vengeance against those who wronged her.
That's a great one.
I'm helping her out.
Yeah. A warlock who makes a dark pact to save his loved ones, but now seeks a way to break free of his patron's control by any means necessary.
Yeah.
Started off bad, trying to become good, but
you got to help him
the whole
along
way through.
Yeah, he's on his redemption arc. Going to be stumbling a little bit.
Sure. And finally, Matt?
The benevolent ruler is secretly a dragon in disguise and is manipulating events to secure his hoard.
You got to get that loot.
I don't care. As a PC, as a person in the chair, benevolent ruler. That's what I need to know. I don't care if you're a dragon. I don't care if the taxes are going to your hoard. If you're doing a good job and you're taking care of the people,
who cares if
run
you
your
eat,
scam, homie.
Who cares if you eat the criminals occasionally and tax them 25%? The roads are paved. I'm getting free
healthcare.
Yeah, 3 square meals a day. I'm good, right?
Yeah. I'm good to go. I'm great with it.
I don't care if it's a red dragon. It's fine.
Nope.
Yeah. Long live the king.
Yeah. As long until the twist comes, he's good to go by me or she.
And if it's a dragon, long live the king. It's a
For real.
long
Yeah.
time. So there you have it. 10 methods that you can use to take your BBEG and make them even more BBEG, more interesting, more flavorful, as well as, of course, a couple of example BBEGs that you can adapt and modify for your campaigns.
You can think of these examples as like parts of a paint palette, right? Just mix and match until you get the color you're looking for and run with it.
Yeah, make a couple happy little trees. The next thing you know, you got a Dark Lord.
Sure thing.
Any questions or comments? Hit us up at Goblin's Corner on all the various socials. Did you enjoy this podcast? We're cooking up a few more. Subscribe to it on your favorite player, YouTube and Twitch. And of course, if you're the part of the 40% that haven't subscribed, please do so or the Dark Lord will come calling.
Click the 5 stars and give us a review on iTunes and Podchaser. And on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button. It helps get our show in front of more people. It boosts the show and feeds the hungry algorithm.
Which is currently grabbing a vial of poison and trying to convince a blue dragon to drink this poison to become a Draco Lich.
We are definitely not here to steal your hoard.
Not at all. Not one bit. That's all the time we have for tonight. Once again, my name is Eric.
And I'm Matt.
We'll see you next time.
Have a good night, folks.
The Goblin's Corner is written and produced by Eric Holden and Matt Staples. Show song by the mighty D20. Don't we love that guy?
Sure.
This is a Subterranean production.